Yes, I would say to be continued. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Ingram. Senator Inhofe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, let me first make the comment about General Maples. Of course, I felt closer to you than an awful lot of the rest of them because of your service at Fort Sill, and you are still talked about at Fort Sill. And as soon as you retire, you become a legend. I suppose that happens. But it's been great working with you, and I appreciate all that you have done. My questions are going to be around the continent of Africa. But before doing that, let me just ask you, probably you, Director Blair. I have often felt for quite some time that our assessment of North Korea has been not quite as strong as I think it should be. I recall back from this meeting right here, from this committee, in August 24th of 1998, we were talking about what their capability was in terms of their nuclear capability and their delivery systems. At that time, I asked the question, or we asked the question as a committee of the administration at that time, how long it would be before North Korea had a multi-stage capability. And the answer was, at that time, I think it might have been an intelligent estimate, or may have just been a letter from the administration, somewhere between 8 and 10 years. 7 days later, on the 31st of August 1998, they fired one. Do you think that our assessment of their capability and their threat is accurate today?
Senator Inhofe, I think we've learned since those days, and I was in an active duty role having to do with the Pacific at that time, so I'm familiar with the issues you raised. I think that we have learned that North Korea is willing to field and deploy with less testing than almost any other country in the world would think is required. So I think that our estimates at that time were probably gave the Koreans or thought that the Koreans would go through more of these steps required to verify the weapons than in fact has proved the case, and so our timelines are much shorter now.
Mm-hmm. I was one of them who had very strong feelings about the AFRICOM. To me, as significant as the continent is, it didn't make any sense to have it in 3 different commands, and I think it's working quite well. General Wald did a great job, and General Ward now is doing a tremendous job. But things are happening there that we don't talk about as much as we do some of the other areas of threat. I have been concerned about it for some time, and I wonder if you feel that adequate resources are well, first of all, it seemed to me it'd make a lot more sense if we had had the command actually located in Africa somewhere. I know the problems that are out there right now. Most of the presidents will say, yes, we would prefer that. We can't sell that to our people, though. Do you think that they have the adequate resources now to take care of the real serious problems in terms of transportation and other resources in that command?
Senator, I am pretty familiar with the establishment of AFRICOM and the desire to make it an integrated, not only military, but also military diplomatic construct. I think the problem was that the Africans, with their history of colonialism and so on, did not see it the same way, and frankly, to this day, do not see AFRICOM, which I think was very smart for all the reasons that you state. Many African countries are looking for a hidden agenda there in terms of deploying American military power, and I think that is the biggest problem that we have. And having started out behind the 8 ball, as we did, we have to sort of win it back an engagement at a time.
Don't you think the successes in ECOWAS are somewhat indicative that parts of certainly West Africa are coming around? My experience is when you talk to the presidents, whether it was of many of these countries, they all agree that it would have been better that way, but as you point out, the threat of colonialism and all of that was an obstacle. Now, getting to some specific areas, you mentioned in your written statement about Zimbabwe, about Mugabe, and some of the problems that are down there. When you go there and you remember that Zimbabwe was the breadbasket of sub-Saharan Africa for so many years, and how this guy has just brought it down to nothing. And do you feel that because of the economic problems and the political problems that are there, and everybody recognizes it, I talked to President Kikwete of Tanzania back when he was the head of the African Union, and they all understand that that's a problem, but it seems like there's a fear there to get in there and correct the problem. Part of that is the relationship, I guess, with South Africa that Zimbabwe has. What obstacles do you think we can overcome? Are we trying to overcome to... my feeling is that in Zimbabwe, as bad as their condition is right now, that's a magnet for terrorist activity. What is your thought?
Senator, I think the larger magnet right now is Somalia rather than Zimbabwe. And in Somalia, as you know, the governance and law and order problems are even worse than they are in Zimbabwe. There's also terrorist activity up in the Maghreb, with the Al Qaeda and Maghreb group. So it's really those two areas that we're more worried about from a terrorist point of view than we are.
I'm really thinking about in the future, though. I know right now that's not the problem. I know Somalia is a problem. Let's move to Somalia then. In your written statement, you talk a little bit about Ethiopia and the fact that they've withdrawn. As I recall, when they first went down there, and they were on our side, very helpful at that time in joining forces with us, that it was really there for a limited period of time. They had limited capabilities, and they said, we're going to go down, we're going to help, but won't be able to stay for a long period of time. Now, maybe my memory doesn't serve me correctly, but that's what I recall. And the reason I bring this up is that there is a movement in both the House and the Senate that is somewhat of a punitive in nature. In terms of Ethiopia, Prime Minister Meles and others, most of it's around social programs, but would you evaluate just the willingness of the Ethiopians to help us? Do you consider them to be a real ally?
I think in their action in Somalia, Senator, the important thing was that the Somalis didn't consider it, or a large portion of Somalis didn't consider it to be helpful. And as you know, they attacked the Ethiopians, including some Somali Americans who went back and became suicide bombers against Ethiopia. So whatever Ethiopia's own mixture of motives in actually making that intervention where it was not supported by important groups within Somalia.
Well, a lot of that was because of Eritrea and their problems, too. One last thing I'd like to observe in Africa is the problem of China. As you go through Africa, and particularly in the oil states, Nigeria and the rest of them, anything that is new and shiny was given to them by China, everywhere you go there. And I know a lot of that is their quest for energy, for oil, and they've made their deals. But also, China has not been our friend in Somalia, has not been or in Sudan, in some of the other areas. And I would just hope that our intelligence community can be watching very carefully the activities of China on the continent of Africa.
Yes, sir. We are doing so, and we will continue to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Inhofe. Senator Bai.
Thank you, Chairman Levin. Thank you, gentlemen, for your service to our country. Admiral, I was struck by